Relative clauses and other types of clause.
Did you know the servant Mrs. Raju trusted saved her child from a mad dog? It reminded me of the incident that happened in the year 2017. We shall lodge a complaint with MCD in case it happens again. There had been several victims to that mad dog. We must get rid of that wild beast.
In the above conversation, we come across group of words that is connected to the main clause of the sentence by that and in case. Look at the sentences. Did you know the servant Mrs. Raju trusted saved her child from a mad dog? Whom or who that Mrs. Raju trusted? It reminded me of the incident that happened in the year 2017. That incident which happened in the year 2017. We shall lodge a complaint with MCD in case it happens again. Adverb clause introduced after in case. Definition. A relative clause is one that's connected to the main clause of the sentence by a relative pronoun or relative adverb. It functions like an adjective and cannot stand alone. Usage. A relative clause or an adjective clause is introduced by a relative pronoun. Which, who, that, as, what. But after a negative which is sometimes omitted. Relative adverbs such as when, where, why, etc. Than as a preposition before a relative pronoun. Infinitive to as an equivalent. Let us look at a few example sentences. Shalu told me a secret which I must not reveal. Here which is equal to but this. I shall be surprised if he does this same way as I do. Relative clause introduced by as after same. The place where Sanjay met his doom was a deserted one. Relative clause introduced by where as these words have the meaning at which. He has no boots to wear. The infinitive with to is used. Here are some more examples. There was not a woman present, but wept to hear such news. It met Mr. Joshi thereupon shook hands with me. The reason why I did it is obvious. I have work to do. Relative clauses. Other relative pronouns.
Mother, this is Anu's brother with whom I went to school.
Renu, I know him very well. He is the same boy who I met at our shop last year.
Oh, so you know each other very well.
I remembered the day when he came with an idea of purchasing a painting for his mother. In the conversation, we come across relative clauses being introduced by relative pronouns. Here are the sentences. Mother, this is Anu's brother with whom I went to school. He is the same boy who I met at our shop last year. I remember the day when he came with an idea of purchasing a painting for his mother. In the first sentence, the relative clause whom is used as the object of a preposition. In the second sentence, the relative clause is introduced by the relative pronoun who. In the last sentence, the defining clause is introduced by when as in the sense of in which. Definition. Relative pronouns introduce relative clauses. The most common relative pronouns are who, whom, whose, which, that. Usage. In relative clause, we use who to refer to people and sometimes to pet animals as the complement of a preposition with collective human nouns but not with things. Whom to refer informal and always with a preposition. Whose to indicate possession by people and animals, with the preposition before a relative pronoun. Which, to refer to animals and things, to introduce defining and non-defining clauses, when the clause refer to a whole sentence. That, instead of who, whom, or which to refer people, animals or things only in defining clauses. Where, when, why to introduce defining relative clauses instead of at which, on which, or for which. Let us look at a few examples. Cambridge is a school where children from more than 50 countries are educated. Where is used to denote a place. The heavy rain, which was unusual for the time of year, destroyed most of the plants in my garden. Which is used for additional information. Neil Armstrong, who was born in 1930, was the first man to stand on the moon. Non-defining clause introduced by who. My mother's company, which makes mobile phones, is moving soon from Mumbai to Delhi. Relative clause with extra information introduced by which. 2001 was the year when terrorists attacked the Twin Towers in New York. Relative clause introduced by when. Relative clauses. Prepositions in relative clauses.
In which street does Amit live in? He lives in the street in which houses are surrounded by high fences. For which organization does he work? He works for Spy Network, which I know nothing about.
In the above sentences, we come across relative clauses with relative pronouns before and after. Here are the example sentences. In which street does Amit live in? He lives in the street in which the houses are surrounded by high fences. For which organization does he work? He works for a spy network, which I know nothing about. In the first and third sentence, while stating interrogative question, the preposition in place before the relative pronoun to sound more formal. In the second and last sentence, the relative clause is introduced by preposition before relative pronoun, retaining its original meaning. Definition. Relative clauses and relative pronouns like who, which, where are used to introduce them in order to identify people and things or to give more information about them. A wide range of prepositions are often used in prepositional structures with relative pronouns who and which to introduce relative clauses. The relative pronoun can also refer to the object of a preposition. Usage. The object of a preposition, when it is pronoun, should be in the objective form. We place the preposition towards the end of the clause rather than before the relative pronoun, and very often the relative pronoun is left out altogether. If the verb in the relative clause is a phrasal verb which ends with a preposition, it can never be placed in front of the relative pronouns which or whom. If the relative pronoun is functioning as the indirect object of the verb in the relative clause, the prepositions to and for are used. The preposition can come either before the relative pronoun whose or at the end of the clause. Relative adverbs when and where are sometimes replaced by a preposition plus which. Let us look at a few examples. This is just something which I have to put up with. Used with a phrasal verb in the relative clause. He is the person that I poured a drink for. For is used as the relative pronoun is functioning as the indirect object of the verb in the relative clause. He is the man I was looking for. Here, whom is understood. Ram is the friend whose car I was traveling in. Used at the end of the sentence with relative pronoun whose. Here are some more examples. Who was the woman who you were talking to? That's the house that my parents live in. He decided to telephone Mrs. Sharma, who he had read about in the newspaper. That's the program to which we listened last night. Participle clauses ing, ed, and being plus ed.
Knowing you don't like potato, I have cooked some beans too.
Oh, thanks, dear.
Working all hours of the day and night, you rarely have time for parties or this kind of thing.
Yummy! Having been cooked, the food looked delicious. In the above conversation, the sisters used clauses with participles to give more information about the noun. Here are the example sentences. Knowing you don't like potato, I have cooked some beans too. Working all hours of the day and night, you rarely have time for parties or this kind of thing. Having been cooked, the food looked delicious. Definition. Participle clauses are a form of adverbial clause which enables us to say information in a more economical way. Usage. We use participle clauses when the participle and the verb in the main clause have the same subject. A present participle, verb plus ing, can be used to combine active clauses with same subject, to replace any active tense. A past participle have a passive meaning. If we wish to emphasize that one action was before another, then we can use a perfect participle, having plus past participle. Let us look at some example sentences. Looked after carefully, this coat will keep you warm through many winters, in place of an if condition. Wanting to speak to him about the contract, I decided to arrange a meeting. In place of so. I had no time to read my book, having spent so long doing my homework. In place of because. Sitting at the cafe with my friends, I suddenly realized that I had left the oven on at home. In place of while. The poem being read by the actor was written by my mother. Being plus past participle. This vase made in China in the 14th century is very valuable. Past participle. Here are some more examples. Seeing you haven't got much time, we'd better go through the figures straight away. She was sitting on a stool, smoking a cigarette. Not having read the book myself, I can't really give you an opinion. They were walking down the street, singing loudly. Participle clauses with adverbial meaning.
Where were you, Raja? Having done my lesson, I went out to play cricket. Working all day, I know you must be tired. Yes, I was. That's why I went out to play for some time. Now I am fresh. Then finish your lunch and come. We shall discuss about our assignment.
In the conversation, we come across participles which fully plays the role of an adverb. Here are the sentences. Having done my lesson, I went out to play cricket. Working all day, I know you must be tired. In the first sentence, perfect participle is used to denote that one action was before another action. In the second sentence, participle clause giving information about the reason. Definition. An adverbial participle is a kind of non-finite verb phrase. It behaves like an adverb with respect to the rest of the sentence and is headed by a participle. Usage. We can use a participle clause instead of a full adverbial clause when the idea, condition, cause, etc. is so strong. The subject of the participle clause and main clause are usually the same. The participle clause, having done something, sometimes suggests that it was important that something was finished first, but it can also sometimes suggest cause. We can use ing clauses with verbs like be, have, wish, know. In these cases, the participle clause usually expresses cause or reason. Let us look at a few examples. Being overpowered, he surrendered because he was overpowered. Possessing all the advantages of education and wealth, he never made a name. Although he possessed all the advantages of education and wealth. Following my advice, you will gain your object. If you follow my advice, walking along the street one day, I saw a dead cobra. While I was walking along the street one day, here are some more examples. Sitting at the cafe with my friends, I suddenly realized that I had left the oven on at home. I had no time to read my book, having spent so long doing my homework. Waiting to speak to him about the contract, I decided to arrange a meeting. Looked after